Here are my girls, left to right, Maureen and Norris. They're going to try to do this video of me. I hope they can get it done. They're fixing their chairs.
Okay.
They're very nice girls, both of them, but they've worried me to death today about this darn thing. We're going to fix this video up and send it to you just as soon as we can. That's not one of them. This is my mother's old home place. She was married here on June the 16th, 1921. And she said there was a paling flints around the place and all the people around had gathered in for the wedding. She said there was horses and wagons, but there was just one thing wrong. Her husband-to-be, my dad, didn't show up. And my grandfather, he was a very testy old fella, an old Irishman, Rousseau Patrick. He said to my mother, "Lily, get back in there and take that dress off and take that hat off." Says, "He's not coming," says, "he's no count anyway." And that just killed my mother. And then she looked up the road and there he came. He was late, but she said he had on a brown suit, and she said she was just thrilled to death. And so am I. I couldn't have had a better daddy. He did drink, and he'd lost his money in a poker game the night before, and they said he had to borrow $2 to get the license, but he got here, and I'm so glad he did. Step it up a little bit. In a vine-covered shack in the mountains, bravely fighting the battle of time, lives a dear one who's weathered life's sorrow. He's that silver-haired daddy of mine. If I could recall all those heartaches, dear old daddy, I caused you to bear. If I could erase those lines from your face and bring back the gold to your hair, if God would but grant me the power just to turn back the pages of time, I'd give all I own if I could atone to that silver-haired daddy of mine. Now I know it's too late, dear old daddy, to repay all those sorrows and cares, but dear mother's waiting in heaven just to comfort and solace you bear. If I could recall all those heartaches, dear old daddy, I've caused you to bear. If I could erase those lines from your face and bring back the gold to your hair, if God would but grant me the power just to turn back the pages of time, I'd give all I own if I could but atone to that silver-haired daddy of mine. The first little church that I went to, I was 3 years old, and my dad's two old maid cousins got me up to sing I'll go sweeping through the gates. And I still know every word of that old hymn, and I learned it when I was 3, but instead of singing I'll go sweeping through the gates, I sung I'll go sleeping through the gates. But there's a little church they've added on, I see, but that's the first little church that I ever attended. This is my big McGoffin County family, all the Prestons and the Praters, the people that came into the county before it was a county, when it was a part of Virginia back in the 1700s. The old house in the background was built in 1842, and this was made in 1935. It has all my grandparents, my mother and my father, and all my brothers and sisters. And we were all dressed up in our reunion finery, but I have two of these groups like this. The photographer was Win Flint. That was Larry Flint's grandfather. He was a well-known photographer in Magoffin County, and he took all the reunion pictures and school pictures and everything. I left there, though, when I was very young, and we went to the bluegrass. My dad got a job as a sharecropper in Bourbon County, and that's the heart of the bluegrass and the tobacco growing country. And we had, my mother was 30 when we moved down there, and she had 5 children by the time she was 30. She eventually had 12. My dad raised 10 acres of tobacco, and one year he made, the tobacco brought 9 cents a pound. The bluegrass years, my mother, as I said, added a little baby boy almost every year. To start with, she had Ruby, Bill, me, Olive, Jean. Then she had 6 little boys in a row. But there was the 4 girls to take care of them. We each had one particular baby that we loved and took care of as our very own. My house for my baby Brenton up in the tree had some planks up there, and I would set him up there on the tree, and then I would tie him on with an old silk stocking or an old cotton stocking to the tree limb while I went down and foraged for food. And I'd get anything that was loose, mulberries, blackberries, little green apples, whatever, and bring them up there for the baby to eat. As we got older, we all had to hit the fields because my dad needed us. We did everything in the tobacco field, from weeding the tobacco bed, then when it got a little bigger, to worming it. My dad would use Paris green on it, but the still big fat hornworms, or tobacco worms we call them, they just eat the tobacco plant up, so we picked them off by hand. You took your hands and picked them off. Sometimes they'd be this long. You picked them off and broke their neck like that, and all that old green tobacco juice ran out on you. When you got home, you'd be just as you'd be just as gummy and nasty as you could be. 14, I was on my way to school one day, and I saw 3 fellas coming down the back road. We had to walk about a mile to the school bus. I saw 3 fellas coming down the back road with a cross-cut saw on their back. They were heading down to the woods to make cross ties for the railroad. They got 25 cents a tie. They worked all day, but they'd turn out 2 or 3 ties a day, doing it all by hand for the L&N Railroad. And I knew the other 2 brothers, the Brown brothers. I knew 2 of them because they'd been around home there. But this one had been away in the 3C camps. He was out in Idaho. He was only 17 when he went in. When he got out, he was 21, I think. He stayed quite a while. And I saw him coming down the road, and I thought, oh my goodness, there's that other Brown brother. Mm-hmm. And that I knew right then that I was going to marry that boy. I knew it. And I was just 14. I was a gawky, big-kneed little rascal, and it's a little 2-room apartment up on 13th Street in Cincinnati. The Women's Army Auxiliary Corps became a part of the regular army. So in September of 43, we had to go and be re-sworn. I was acting sergeant. I had my own platoon, and boy, I drilled the pants off of those girls out there on that old hot sand in Daytona. One of my lieutenants came up and said, "Where do you think you're going?" I said, "I'm going down to be re-sworn." She says, "No, I have a little piece of paper here that says you're just 18 years old." Because there was rumors that we were going to North Africa. And I probably would have been with the first contingent of WACs that went to North Africa in 43. So I got a nice honorable discharge with a character rating excellent, which I've been proud of. I was 18 and went to work at the Newport Yacht Club. It was a nightclub on a boat down on the river in Newport, Kentucky. And they called Newport Little Chicago in the old days. That's where all the old Cleveland Syndicate Mafia, and I'm going to stay just a little while longer. He was already drunk, but that made me mad, so I drank a beer. Then I drank another. And he came out finally, and he was standing there at a slot machine, and there was a waitress there, had her little apron on, and Bedford would put a quarter in the machine, and when he had hit, well, she was dragging the money out and putting it in her apron pocket. She was standing right beside him, and I just looked up, and I'd had just enough. I had never drunk anything before. I had just enough to see what was going on, and I got up and I got her by the collar, pinned her right down on the floor, and we went at it. Then they separated us, and I took her money out of her pocket. I probably took her tips too, but I was going to get Bedford's money back. She wasn't going to get that. And we got that little house, and we lived there 9 years, the happiest years of my life. My youngest child was born there, Norris.
Of 4.
And what?
Of 4, you
Yeah,
gotta say.
my youngest of 4 children was born there. A creek in front of it, the hills in the back, and we had some very hard times. But then one day I've always looked at the ads for little chances that maybe I could better myself some way. And Bedford was he'd started trapping and hunting. He'd lost his job on the railroad. We were having a reel for drinking, and we'd had a real hard time. But the drinking kept up and the troubles, and I went to work at an old country club I was making 50 cents an hour, washing dishes, walking to work, leaving the kids with Bedford. It was just a hard time all around. And then I saw this ad in the Fur Farm News about a job. One was in Chicago and one was in California. I wrote to both of them. Decided to take the California job. And we left Steep Creek the last of February in 1963. I bought an old car over in Cincinnati, an old Oldsmobile, a 1955 Oldsmobile, for $125 and $5 tax, $130. But anyhow, that was the best car that I have ever owned until now. I have a new car now. But that was the best car. It took us all, we loaded that, we took the table apart and put the tabletop on top of the car and loaded everything we had and our 4 children and set out for the promised land. And it just like the Okies leaving the Dust Bowl, we made it. And when we got to Torrance, California, where the Caldwells own the mink ranch, we had $3.65 left and a wheelbarrow going out. And I remember the sound of that old wheelbarrow going clunk, clunk, clunk as we went down through Torrance. California opened up a whole new life for all of us. The children started to school. We were just awestruck. Leads to writing, that's what it is. I've been a writer all my life, really. It was just letters when I was little, when I was young, but I've always written letters, and lots of them. And then it's a natural outgrowth of all that reading.
When did you start writing?
I really started after we moved to California.
When did you?
Trying to publish, that is. And the first thing that I wrote, I thought about how I had been raised up back in the mountains of Kentucky and how poor we were and everything, and I called it A Definition of Poverty. And I sent it to Friar Magazine. It's a little Catholic publication, and they paid me $15. I have never been so pleased in my life. If you read a lot of good books in your lifetime, you're going to know how to write.
So what do you consider your first big break?
My first big break was when we moved back to Kentucky by then, and Larry Flint was in the news, and of course he's, from Salyersville, my hometown, and I wrote a...
Did you know him? Did you grow up with him?
No. We knew his family, but Larry had gone off
you know, had been gone all those years, and Larry's a lot younger than I am. So I wrote a letter, a profile of Salyersville, Kentucky, and I sent it up to Moore magazine in New York, and they published it. And somehow Larry had his offices in Columbus, Ohio then, and he called his cousin down in Salyersville, and he had read the article. I don't know who, I guess Moore sent him a copy or something. But he said, who in the hell's Mary Lou Brown? And his cousin told him, so when he came to Salyersville for a reunion, he got in touch with me. And he hadn't bought the Plains, Georgia Monitor then, but shortly after he bought the paper in Plains. Larry likes publicity, and he brought the paper in Plains, Georgia. Yeah, that was when Jimmy Carter came into office. So they called me and wanted to know if I would go down to Plains as editor of his new paper, the Plains, Georgia Monitor. He'd also bought a paper there in Atlanta. And so I went down to, I didn't know a thing. Although I'd been writing a column for the local paper for some time, for 5 or 6 years, I went down to Plains, and I didn't know a thing on earth about the newspaper business, but I soon learned. The paper went to the White House, and Carter said, wrote a little thing on the paper and sent it back to me, and it said, you've got a good little newspaper, you've got some good hard news in there for a change.
Had the paper not been noted for its good news?
No, it had been a little paper that just glorified Jimmy Carter and his family and the Peanuts and what else. But when I got down there, I found out that the little town that they were billing as America's hometown was the most bigoted, racist little town I ever set foot in my life. And I didn't go down there to fight any wars, because in McGoffin County we didn't have one black family at the time. I didn't take up the cause but then when I got down there to see those old people, mostly black, some white people, in little shacks. This was in 1978, and in little shacks that just like we had lived in back in the mountains 30 or 40 years ago. No toilets, no running water, just shacks. And so the America's Times Recorder, which was a very conservative little paper, they ran an article or a big spread one day, and it had historic homes of Sumter County. And boy, they had some big antebellum mansions and just beautiful and everything. So the next week I sent my photographer out and took the picture of all those little shacks, and every one of them inhabited by sometimes big families. And the next week I came back with mine with all the little shacks, and I said, historic homes of Sumter County. Oh, that went over like a lead balloon. The peanut warehouse and the businesses along Main Street cut their ads out, and I wrote or called Larry Flint, and I said, Larry, I'm losing advertising. I don't know what we're going to do. We're not taking in much money to start with. What am I going to do? He said, don't you worry about a thing. He said, you say what you want to say. Millard Fuller started Habitat for Humanity in Americus, Georgia. And it was just getting off the ground when I was there. And so far, the paper before I got there had not given them one bit of publicity whatsoever, because Koinonia Farms was associated with it, and all the Sumter Countyans were calling them communists and this and that, because they were helping the black people.
Hippies.
Hippies and communists, and you know how they spread on about people. And so I started giving Millard all the publicity I could. When they built a little habitat house over in Americas, I published before and after pictures, and then we got to be good friends, and I did everything I could for her to help me out. And then when I left Plains, after Jimmy Carter was defeated in 1980 for president, and before I left Plains, I donated the first down payment. I donated the down payment for the first house Habitat House built in Plains, and I was always proud of that. And I've just done a lot of writing since then. But Larry Flint gave me the chance. He gave me. I had been a cook all my life, and I might say a pretty good cook. But he gave me a chance. I knew that I could do something else. And although I quit school, I didn't finish high school, but I read enough that I knew I could hold my own when it came to writing, and I have. My husband, Bedford Brown, we went to California years ago, and he said, Mary Lou, one day, he said, I believe I'll make you a guitar. I said, well, do it. And this is the first one he made. He made lots of them after that. This is Brenda was the last of the litter. She was the last of 12 children, and we didn't know. We never did know that Brenda could sing. We'd all sit around singing. She wouldn't join in, and then finally one day, when she was about 25 or 30, she joined in, and she took over from there.
Okay, here's a little bluegrass then. Well, I know what it means to be lonesome. Woo! I know what it means to be blue. And I know what it means to be lonesome in dreams when there is someone there with you. Well, my baby left me this morning when the clock was striking 4. Well, I know what it means to be lonesome, and I know what it means to be blue, and I know what it means to be lonesome in dreams when there is someone there for me. Well, I've cried and I've cried since we parted. No one knows what I've been through. Well, I'd give all I own just to have you back home. I'm blue and I'm lonesome too. And I know what it means to be lonesome. And I know what it means to be blue. And I know what it means to be lonesome in dreams when there is someone there with you.
One of the best musicians in the family couldn't be here tonight. Everybody that knows us well knows why. But he is a fine musician. He's written songs for Ralph Stanley and had them recorded. He's the finest harmonica player that ever played a harmonica. He can put Charlie McCoy in a shade every day of the week. But he couldn't be here.
He wrote down to sing the Rock of Ages.
He wrote the most beautiful song. I've just seen the Rock of Ages. Oh,
Why don't you sing that? Oh, yes.
I'll sing. I'll sing.
Come on.
I've just seen the Rock of Ages, and Ralph Stanley recorded it. It's been recorded by 18 or 20 different groups now. It's a classic now.
Vi har vårt som givet att du
Stuck. I was standing by the bedside where my fevered mother lay. Then she called me close beside her, and I thought I heard her say, he will lay. There she'll rest beside the fountain, where she sleeps beneath the clay. I've just seen the Rock of Ages, Jacob's ladder hanging down. I've just crossed the river of Jordan. Now, my son, I'm homeward bound. Now, my son, I'm homeward bound. I forgot the second verse.